Bethany Stec Janicek, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thanks for having me, Howard.
It's good to be here. It's so funny because we recorded this whole thing about a month ago and
Yep.
it did not record. So I just want to put that out there. Normally I don't share like little technological glitches with listeners because it doesn't matter, but I feel like there's a way in which we're going to have to try to be fresh and new, even though we've kind of already done this.
Yeah.
So let's start with your story. And I'm looking at the notes I took last time, and the phrase I have here is a big murky bowl of before.
Yeah. That's a really good way to describe it. That's really what it was. My before, just really briefly, I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. We always grew up eating meat, potatoes, milk, butter, eggs, all the farm traditional Midwest stuff. And I was always overweight as well from a very young age. I remember being kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and just really noticing that I was physically much larger than my friends and classmates. And very quickly, the emotional eating and the binge eating started as a very young age, with candy and cookies and stealing, desserts and stuff at holiday events. And I just remember just never getting enough of junk food and refined stuff and all this. And this led to binging and purging in high school and, not eating and a ton of spiral emotional eating everywhere. I mean, any kind of emotional eating, I partaked in some bit of it. And it was just a roller coaster. It was such a roller coaster of food. And then when I got into college, it was alcohol and cigarettes and like all this stuff. And it just was a lot of fake stuff. It was a lot of chaos. It was a lot of fake, masked stuff I was masking emotions for, no confidence. I was, making things bigger and brighter because I didn't feel that way truly deep down. And so, yeah, it was a lot of murky glob. It's a really good way to put it.
So do you think you were successful in masking? Do you think that you were fooling people or fooling people who didn't know you or family or close friends?
Yeah, I would say, I guess it depends what you mean by successful in it. But yeah, I guess it's successful in fooling. I was always, happy-go-lucky, very social, outgoing, extrovert. And I still am. That wasn't fake, but it was like sugar-coated version. It was a sugar-coated version of really me. And even if I didn't feel my best, I made it so that I was fine, because I didn't want to draw outside attention to me. I was giving myself enough harshness and enough, a hard time and stuff like that I didn't want other people to do that same thing. So I think it was a lot of like masking and walls up and blocking anyone else from seeing what I was really feeling because it was so painful for me that I didn't want to bring anyone else into it. So I guess, yeah, I was successful at masking it in that way. But it just ended up, at one point, ended up being too much for me to handle in so many different ways.
When I listen to you now, having had a month to sort of think about it, it kind of reminds me of our culture's relationship with people in the media, where, like you weren't, it was a mask, but it was still sort of you. It wasn't some foreign creature. It was you, but filtered and made up. And,
Yes.
and like so many people, who have to maintain, it's like you were on some sort of reality show 24/7 trying to present the best version of yourself.
Yeah, it really was. I talk about this a lot. I wore a lot of, a ton of makeup, a ton of jewelry, a ton of my hair done up, a ton of accessories and scarves and, big jewelry and stuff. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but the reason that I was doing it was to draw attention towards those things and away from what was deep down inside. So again, nothing wrong with makeup or scarves or anything like that, but it was why I was doing it and how I was doing it up, and what I was covering up that was, the problem, or alarming. and then from scarves and makeup and all that, it turned to, cigarettes, and then it turned to alcohol, and then it turned to a really bad alcohol problem. And then it turned to depression and anxiety. So I had all of these different types of masks at different times of my life, in my journey, until I made that decision to make a lifestyle change. The masks came in so many different forms. And I think that's really important to talk about, because not everyone has that the mask doesn't look the same to everybody. And that to say, you just never know what someone else is going through or feeling too. What on the outside isn't necessarily what they're feeling on the inside.
How conscious were you at that point of what your strategy was? Did you know that you were hiding and masking? And what did you think you were hiding and masking? Weight or something else?
I don't know. Looking back at it, I can see all this stuff, from a clear mind and kind of outside of the box and away from that time of my life. I can see it more clearly than I did when I was in it. How conscious I was during it, I mean, from age 16 to 23, which is when I made my lifestyle change, there was a lot of drinking. So I don't know how much consciousness there really was, because there was so much alcohol. But yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of that time was just, it was like survival mode, it was like, what do I have to do to not feel this way about myself? What do I have to do to put a wall up? What do I have to do to get away from this feeling and to like tune out and check out? And I did that in the form of food and alcohol and, tons of, drugs to help with anxiety and depression and stuff. It was always, it was like chaos, survival mode, trying to do anything that I could think of to get away and to feel better and to tune it out.
Mm. Did anyone kind of notice and talk to you about it and want to help and intervene?
Yeah, I did. Family and friends would say things, but where it really took a turn was after I left my freshman year of college. I didn't end up completing my freshman year. I took medical leave, and that was when I really sunk into the worst. That was my lowest point. I was severely depressed. I was on anxiety and depression medicine. I was having these horrible stomach pains. I had my gallbladder removed eventually after meds and nothing was working. So I was having these shooting stomach pains, totally, anxiety up the roof. I was totally depressed. I had just gotten out of a really bad relationship, and I just was I was eating my life away, drinking my life away, popping pills, every day. And I decided that I was going to take my life. I was just done. I was done with everything. I didn't want to live like I was anymore. It was the same stuff every single day, and I was done. And I made a plan to I was planning, I was thinking, I was talking, and I was talking to a good friend about kind of where I was at and what I was thinking. And I'm just like making comments like, I don't want to be here anymore. This is it, those kinds of phrases. And she was like, I'm not going to let her just, say these things without doing something. And so she called another friend of ours, and they called the cops, and the cops showed up at my house. And I was still technically a minor at that point. I was 18, and medical in Nebraska was 19. And so they're like, you either going to come willingly with us or we're going to take you. And I'm like, okay. So I spent a week in a mental facility after that moment. And so yes, friends did intervene, and I'm so glad that they did. And I think that was it was a wake up call for me at that point. And also for my family, like, whoa, there's more going on than the outside is portraying. Mm-hmm. So that was the low point for, the depression and anxiety portion. That did improve after that, but it wasn't until years later that I kind of got a little bit back into it before I decided to make my lifestyle change when I was 23.
So what happened when you were 23?
So I'm 23. So all the hospital stuff and all that was when I was 18 or 19. Um, and got better in that way, but still was eating horrible food, still was partying, still was doing that. I just felt a little bit better in those ways. But when I was 23, it kind of all like the world almost like opened up. Like I started to like see opportunity. I started to not think of myself as a victim. I knew that I was in control of my lifestyle, and I decided what I ate. I decided to drink. I decided to go to fast food. I'm in control of my decisions. And so that kind of opened up to me, and I almost realized it maybe for the first time that I'm in control of stuff and I'm not a victim. And so I was just so tired of other things at this point in my life. I was tired of not being able to breathe when I was walking up the stairs or tying my shoes. I was, tired of eating bags of donuts in the closet by myself and looking in the mirror and not knowing who's looking back at me. So the moment that everything changed was my younger brother asked me, we were back home visiting my family, and he asked me how my lifestyle and nutrition was going, because he knew I'd always struggled with, my weight and working out and eating healthy and stuff like that. And at that point, it was not going well at all. But I made it sound, just like I had so many times before, made it sound really awesome. Like things are going so great. I have a gym membership, which was true, but I never went. I've kind of been watching what I was eating, which maybe meant that I had a salad 3 months ago, right? So I was like saying all of these things that I had always done before, the talk and the show and all that. But I was like listening to myself say it this time, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're making it sound like everything is like so great and you're doing so well, and you're not. Like, wake up, and it was kind of that. I kind of woke up that moment, and that was the moment and the day that I changed my lifestyle. I started moving forward, and I haven't stopped since. And I think it was really important for me to kind of call myself out on my own BS in that moment and make the decision to make a change, even though I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how it was going to look. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I decided that I was going to do it. And that decision was so strong, so firm. And I just started and kept moving forward.
Great. Now, you as a Nebraska girl growing up on a pig farm, you probably didn't jump right into, the Furman or Esselstyn protocols, right? So
Right.
What did you do first?
So I didn't even know that those doctors existed at this point, that the whole food plant-based lifestyle existed. I didn't know. So I did what I had always done before in all of these other fad diets. Like I had done all the fad diets, the counting calories, the watching portions, the not eating, the military diet, the Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers. Like I've done it all. And so I'm like, what am I going to do this time? Because, I wasn't sure if these prior diets didn't work because they didn't work and they were fad, or because I didn't commit. Like I really wasn't sure kind of how that looked and what I was going to do. So I cut out what I thought was the obvious type of things that I needed to change. So I stopped drinking. I had already stopped smoking at this point. I quit the fast food and the, donuts and ice cream and that kind of junky type food. And I increased my fruits and vegetables. I did all that at the same time, reduced that and increased this. I still was doing like lean meats, fat-free cheeses, sugar-free Chips Ahoy cookies, things like the fad type stuff, Greek yogurt and turkey. And I was doing all the healthy fad type stuff. And about a couple months in, so this would have probably been 2 or 3 months in, that same brother showed me or introduced me to Dr. Furman via a PBS special, one of his specials on PBS, The Eat to Live. And I'm watching this special on PBS, and I bet my jaw is on the floor. And I just couldn't believe that he was talking about this lifestyle of abundance and variety and, eat to satisfaction and no deprivation, no restriction. I'm like, what is going on? Because this is the total opposite of anything else that I've ever heard, been taught, people talk about, right? Because this diet mentality is one of deprivation and restriction, and that was what I was used to. And so to look at food and nutrition and a lifestyle change in a different way, I was like, well, I might as well try this. Like I've tried everything else. But it was a little bit more than that. It wasn't just I'm going to try it because it's new and it sounds good. It was like, I think that I have found what I've been looking for my entire life is this lifestyle. And there was just such excitement. It wasn't even nerves or anything. It was excitement of like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to start. You know, I bought the book, I bought the cookbook, I, overhauled my pantry and stuff, and eventually did cut out indefinitely the meat and cheese and eggs and stuff like that. But I couldn't believe that I hadn't heard of this lifestyle before. How is this not mainstream, everybody knows, public knowledge thing? Like I was excited, but I was also like kind of mad that this information isn't, on the news right now. This information isn't being taught to us, in school and stuff. And so it's a little bit why I do what I do now, and of course you too, in sharing this information, right? But I just remember feeling like this, both literal and figurative weight being lifted off, like I can breathe now. I can live now. I can thrive now. And I don't have to be handcuffed, and I don't have to hide, and I don't have to, count out my points for the day. Like I actually get to live now. And that was something that I hadn't felt in 15 years, like since I was little, because I started dieting probably in 4th grade, so this was so refreshing to me.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to go back to that moment when you sort of realized that you had control. Mm-hmm. Because, it's one of the things when I'm coaching someone that I know that that's the thing that I have to get them to flip the switch on. Yeah. I was coaching someone today who kind of feels like, she doesn't have control over, let's say, her impulse to eat certain foods or her impulse to put other people before herself. Mm-hmm. So I want to highlight that what you did not do was figure out the right thing to do and do it. Mm-hmm. Right? That wasn't the key. But you made an observation and kind of a decision that changed everything. And is there a way that we can bottle that for people, or you can kind of explain what that was like to go from no agency to 100% agency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting because that's how it's a lot of how I coach now too. It's like, we'll deal with the hows. We'll figure out the hows. Don't worry about the how, but stripping back to the very beginning in making that decision. And I think too, for me, it was the decision, but the two key parts for me in that decision was knowing what I wanted, like what was the outcome, and also why I wanted it. Again, I'll figure out how to do it later, but what did I want and why did I want it? Right? Because at this point, it wasn't just, I want to lose 20 pounds. Like this is, I want to live. I want to breathe going up the stairs without huffing and puffing. I want to look at myself and love who's looking back at me. That's never happened before. Like I wanted all of these things, and I had such deep-rooted whys of why I wanted them. And I allowed myself time to dig those up, right? Because I think so many people that are making a decision to make a change, they're only seeing that surface level stuff. I want to lose weight so I can feel better. Okay, yes. Why though? Why do you want to lose weight and feel better? So it's digging deep down into, and you'll dig up some stuff that probably isn't very comfortable. But you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable so you can get down to, what you really want, why you want this, and what it is that you really want. So dig past the surface level stuff and give yourself permission to do that and to be vulnerable with yourself and to call yourself out on your own BS. I said that before too. That was really helpful to me. I had to say, you know what? It's okay. Your past, whatever you've dealt with, is okay. Where you're at right now, we have to address where you're at and then move forward. So I had to tell myself, like, look, you have an emotional eating problem. You're addicted to refined sugar. It's okay. We'll figure it out. But we have to address where we're at now. This is all to myself, right? We have to address where we're at so that we can get better. and improve. And so I think it's really giving yourself permission to dig deep and to figure out what those are. And the hows will come, but that beginning part is so key. Very, very key.
Yeah, and I love what you said about sort of the willingness to look at where you are, because not only is it strategically crucial. So like if you're lost on the road somewhere and you're unwilling to look at your GPS or look at a map, you're not going to be able to find your way out. But also, I find that looking at something that I don't want to look at is actually like weightlifting practice for the soul.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been having some dodgy financials lately. And so the one thing I don't want to look at is my bank statement. Which is, of course, and so like I'm finding myself, I have an app where I get a check and I can deposit the check via the app, and I'm trying to push the deposit button before the account information screen comes up. I'm like, so that's like, I think that, well, when I have more money in my account, then I'll look. But I think the truth is much closer to when I have the cojones to look, I will then start building the tools to be responsible with finance.
Absolutely. So much of that is you can apply that to this lifestyle. Absolutely. I think that there are so many reasons why not to do something, right? I could give you every reason why I didn't make a lifestyle change in the past, right? Finances, protein, what are other people going to say? All these things, right? There's an excuse for everything. But if you're going to let that excuse rule you, or if you're going to say, look at it and be like, okay, how can I work around this? Or is this really true? That's a big part of it too. So many people see, a lifestyle transformation or someone succeeding, and they think, I can't do that. And that mentality of thinking and telling yourself that you can't do that is going to be your reality if you continue to keep thinking that, right? Like what we think and what we focus on grows. And so constantly thinking like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm so far behind, or why am I not like that person? Like when we surround our thoughts with that, that's where we end up living every single day, So a lot of it is that perspective shifts of I can, even though I don't know what I'm doing right now. And even though I'm overweight, and even though I'm addicted to chocolate donuts and ice cream, even though all of these things, right? Addressing where you're at. Where you're at's perfectly fine. Where do you want to go from there? Like, let's go, And so I think it's being your own friend in those moments enough to say those things to yourself and have those conversations with yourself. And like you said, have the cojones to actually look at realistically what is happening right now, and not to critique it and not to say, look, you're a failure, but to just look at it and go, okay, this is where I'm at, and where do I want to be? What does that look like? And then it's the how do I get there?
Right. And I'm imagining that there, and I know for myself that there's a fine line between not cursing myself with predictions like, oh, I can't do this, and lying to myself. Like, oh, I've totally got this, right? That there's some part of me when I say that out loud, there's like a big klaxon horn BS detector that goes off. So I think that's why it's so important to figure out some small action to take to begin to prove to myself that I can do something.
Absolutely. The action steps are key. And I think that people get, and me, for example, this happened to me so many times, I would get caught up in the end. I'd be like, oh, I need to lose 80 pounds and I need to do it in a year, and then the pressure's on, right? There's numbers, there's dates, there's all these things. And then you're like, what do I do now? And there you just get lost in this, like, a fictitious weight by a certain date, mentality. And the actions, stripping that back, letting go of the number on the scale, letting go of a certain number of pounds by a certain date, letting that just not be a thing, and relax and say, what do I have to do right now to what decision could I make right now that could move me forward? Breaking it down into, yes, weight loss might be a goal and an outcome, but what action steps can you do to get there, right? We can have a large salad every day. We can refrain from alcohol or, refined sugar and things like that. So having little action steps, like you said, too, and knowing that you can't, to prove to yourself that you can do something. So maybe it's like a little 3-day something. Oh, I'm going to eat a salad for 3 days for lunch, And once you crush that, what next? Maybe a week now, or maybe you start to, incorporate something else. So I think those baby steps, and not even baby steps, but they are that. And I use this analogy a lot. My grandma makes these big quilts, right? But she doesn't start with one huge piece of fabric. She starts with a little piece, a little patch. And then she gets another little patch, and then she attaches it to that. And then there's another design, and then another color, right? And then eventually she has this huge, large quilt, right? But she had all these little action steps, little patches that together yield a great result. And I think looking at it in that way and knowing that you don't have to do some huge, extravagant, grand thing. You just have to strip back and do some action steps and just put them together and just keep going.
I think you've helped me just now refine a coaching methodology that I use, because I'm always really big on, okay, what's the goal? Let's measure it. Let's quantify it. Let's set a time. Let's set a date so that we know we're moving forward. But what I'm suddenly realizing is if somebody doesn't yet believe they can move in that direction, then that's premature. That we have to start. It's like, your grandmother has probably made enough quilts that now she has a vision. Okay, I'm going to do geese in flight, or I'm going to do log cabin. And she, even though she's taking one step at a time, she has a vision of the end because she's gotten there. But maybe the first quilt she ever made, the thing she needed to do was to sew together 2 pieces of fabric in a straight line.
Yeah. It's crazy the amount, how a quilt can, using that analogy, can have someone be like, oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Like I can do, and what I found too in my coaching is that the goal is fine. Have the goal. Have a long list of goals. That's okay. It's great to have things to look forward to. But then how do we strip that back and look at it today? How do we look at our end goal and not be there yet? And again, that's okay. But what do I do for my next meal that will help get me there? What other patch? What's my next patch, so to speak, right? Maybe it's I have 15 minutes free. What can I do in this 15 minutes? I'm going to make a hummus quick, and then I'm going to go for a quick walk. Doing things in those kind of little action steps, the bite-sized things, so that you can have those little wins. It's not one big win at the end. Like the journey's not the destination. The destination is the journey. And so what are those little bite-sized wins that you can have so that you can build up that confidence that you might have never felt before? Right. Speaking from example, or for myself.
Your training montage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the movies, it takes 3 minutes. Right.
Yeah.
In life, it's almost the entirety.
It is. And I think that's one thing that I stress so much with my clients too, is it's not the destination. We'll get there. The weight loss will come, but the journey is where the work happens. The journey is where the growth happens. The journey is where you look at the journey and you have all of these wins and you have all these successes, and they will yield a lot of your end goals. You'll be checking stuff off left and right. But if you're only looking at that end, that light at the end of the tunnel, you'll miss all of the stuff, and it'll be clouded over, and you'll miss that journey. You'll miss the needed patches. You'll miss the action steps and the bite-sized wins that you need to get there.
Yeah, I was interviewing Leslie Patterson yesterday, who's a 3-time world champion in off-road triathlon.
Awesome.
And we were talking about, for us regular mortals, like it's okay to say, well, I want to win this race, or I want to do really well, but I'm not going to obsess over the outcome. And I was asking Leslie, does that work at a high stakes event when your sponsorship is on the line, when it's your career? And she said, well, all I do is focus on the process steps. Like, what's my cadence? Are my shoulders tense? Like even and maybe especially at that level, focusing on process is how the best people in the world achieve the outcomes that we think we want.
Yes. Yeah. And for her, for example, if her shoulders were tense the whole time and she didn't put attention to that small little bite-sized detail of the process, she would have had tense shoulders the whole race and might not have gotten to where, the end. Yeah, I love that. I think that it's key. And another thing too is that, speaking of races, it reminds me of another one of my favorite analogies. You're driving to Target because you have some stuff to get, right? Toilet paper, toothpaste, whatever. And then your mom calls and you get distracted, right? And you make a wrong turn. And you're like, oh, dang it, Mom, I gotta go. I gotta go to Target. Do you hang up? Do you go back home to start over because you took a wrong turn? No, you just get back on the track, you get back on the road, and you go because you have things to get at Target. And so I think that, another really key thing of change is not throwing the towel in and starting over. You're here. Day one's in the books. Like, life's going. Like, let's go. Let's keep going. Similar to a runner. If a runner dropped their baton, would they pick it up and go back to the starting line and then start again? No, the race is going. Let's go. We're still going. And so not throwing in that towel, not having that starting over mentality, but knowing that it is a journey and that there will be struggles and obstacles and stumbles. We all have them. But I think that it's important not to have that starting over mentality because society and a pressure makes us feel that we failed, right? Well, I failed. I got to start over. I got to have a clean slate. And the truth is there's going to be struggles and stuff. And so working through them and having that win on the other side of it, small wins, one after the other is really key. So I talk about that a lot. No starting over. Don't throw in the towel. It's not day one again. It's day 4,800, whatever. Let's keep going. Next day, new day. Let's continue.
Yeah, it's weird because as you said that, I suddenly started thinking about, one of the principles of behavioral science that's been sort of refined over the last 20 or 30 years is the idea of the sunk cost fallacy. That like you put energy into something, and even though it's not working out for you, you feel like you're still in. Like, let's say you bought tickets to a concert and now, you don't really want to go and maybe it's snowing out and you've got something better to do, but you feel like you have to go because you've sunk cost into it. But yet we don't do that with all the effort that we've already put into improving ourselves. Why don't we see that as sunk cost?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to look at ourselves for a number of different reasons. It's really hard to, to kind of to call yourself out and to look at where you're at and to say like, hey, this didn't work like I thought it would, right? It's almost like letting yourself down or feeling let down by yourself is so powerful and so emotional sometimes and a lot of pressure that it's almost easier for people to cop out. I don't know if cop out's the right phrase, but to start over and say, you know what, just pretend this didn't happen. I'm going to start over fresh, you know? But the growth is when you look at the stumble or the struggle and you go, all right, what did I learn here that I can apply going forward so that this doesn't happen again or that it's a different outcome or something, right? Because to me, the word failure doesn't exist. I don't think that people do fail because you either win and succeed at whatever you set out to do and it was a success, right? Or you learn and grow from it, which to me is a form of success. So we need to look at a struggle, a failure, an obstacle, a stumble, whatever, and look at it and say, what did I learn? How can I grow? And how can I better use this going forward? Because if you forget about it and pretend it didn't happen and put the walls up and start over, you miss that lesson. You miss that, the growth. And so I think it's really important to just power through it and look at it and go, all right, and then just keep going. Just pick up the towel and keep going.
Yeah, I think that's the key moment because we all have stories of I've tried this. Like we all have a story of, well, I'm the sort of person who gives up after a while or I screw up. And, in your story, like you listed the number of diets that you had done and, you kept the history. You didn't ignore the facts, but you separated the facts from the the sort of the meta description of those facts. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
on Weight Watchers, I was on Jenny Craig, I was on the military diet. And what was so easy for us to do is then say, I'm a screw up, I keep failing on diets, as opposed to, well, that's an interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a fact, so it has no place here.
Yeah, there's a difference between knowing something is or having something be true or false and then just having a perspective of something, right? So I use this analogy so many times with food and transitioning into this lifestyle because I hear a lot of pushback about, well, I don't like vegetables. Well, I don't like salads. Well, I don't, whatever. And that's okay to not like them right now, but maybe that perception, that thought that you deem as fact was based on one event that happened 20 years ago, right? You had a really bad salad or you had poor quality vegetables or your mom used to make them in a way that you just didn't agree with you when you were 5. And so you've taken that and you're still living that out to be truth when it's really just a perspective from you as a 5-year-old. So allowing and giving yourself permission to let go of what you've been carrying that might not be true and shift that perspective and say, okay, I didn't like tomatoes when I was 5, how my mom prepared them, for example's sake, but maybe I would love raw tomatoes in guacamole, or maybe I would love blended tomatoes in a tomato basil soup, right? And so shifting that perspective to having them in different ways and opening up to that, and not just with food, with anything. You were talking about the diets. That doesn't mean that just because I had lost all, I'd tried all these diets and none of them worked, doesn't mean that I'm doomed to be overweight, obese, and depressed for the rest of my life. Like one doesn't mean the other, right? They're not mutually exclusive. So I think it's important to kind of know the difference between, is what I think and feel for sure a definite fact? Or is it an old opinion? Is it something society told me was true? Or is it a perspective that I could just shift that would make my lifestyle more easy and more fun?
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think if you had an identity shift? Because you sort of went from I am ... before, and then I am ... now. Well, how might you complete those two phrases?
Ooh, before, yeah, I would say my personality or how I've always kind of viewed myself in the past. Like I always did well in school. I came from a great family, parents and siblings and good friends and stuff like that. But myself, I wasn't good with myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't know who I was. And so if I were to complete that sentence before, I would say something like, I am unsure. I am lost. I am walking around with, a plastic wrapped version of what I might be underneath. I didn't know. Like I had no clue. And when I started my lifestyle change and I started to put more focus on me so that I could be a better, wife, sister, friend, coworker, all this stuff, and I put that focus on me, I started to discover who I was. And I also started to create who I was too. Like I didn't like vegetables before, but I'm going to make sure that I love vegetables. And so what does that look like? What do I have to do? And so I could kind of create my own reality in that way too, which was really exciting for me. I didn't know that you could do that. Like I didn't know you could create your own life and that you were in charge. Like I didn't think that I had that control. And once I found that and I was able to like create my own reality, so to speak, it was really refreshing and it kind of opened up, and now I know better, who I am, and I can create who I want to be and live that out. And so now, I am open, I am real, raw, authentic, like call it like it is. And I would say open is probably the word that sticks out to me most is open, because before I had the walls up, before I was closed, before I was carrying around all of those old, thoughts that were maybe my mom's or society's or magazines or something. And I was carrying around all this stuff that wasn't me. And now I'm figuring out what is me and what feels good and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. So, but you have to be open to that and know that it might be a little bit uncomfortable figuring out what you like and what you don't like and how that looks and how you can learn to love vegetables and stuff like that. Because when my mind was no longer overruled and controlled by unhealthy food and all this stuff, and I had control, I had so much more time to think about stuff. And I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what my hobbies were, because my hobbies before were partying, happy hour, eating in the closet by myself, and all food related. So once those were gone, I was like, what do I like to do? What are my who am I? And so I had this open platform, an open field to create it and to design it and to just go and just try some stuff. And being open was something that has helped me so much. Being open and allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to create your life.
Was that ever terrifying, to realize everything I thought I knew about myself wasn't real, and here I am. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I could just imagine sort of sit, and I've had this experience mm-hmm. where, I went through a really difficult internal time, and I kind of woke up and I was like, I don't know. Everything I had ever been doing, more or less, was to please other people and to get approval and to get by. And now I got to take charge. Did you have moments of existential terror around that, or was it just exhilarating?
It was, to tell you the truth, it really was just exhilarating. The terrifying part was staying stuck where I was. That was the terrifying part. And I think that was a moment for me too, in that moment in my parents' kitchen when my brother said, "How's everything going?" And I kind of was like, what am I doing? I need to, it was, the terrifying part for me was staying stuck where I was. That was terrifying. I didn't want any part of that anymore. And so anything that felt, open and refreshed and possibilities and changed perspectives, I'm like, yes, bring it on, because that was so not how I lived before. So to answer your question, no, it wasn't terrifying to realize that, nutrition is not being taught as it should be, or that, I was going to be going through all these obstacles coming up and, change and being uncomfortable. That wasn't terrifying. It was more terrifying to stay stuck where I was than it was to think about trying tomatoes, and eating more salads and saying no to fast food and stuff. The terrifying part was staying stuck where I was.
So we've talked about the fact that the details are far less important than this deep stuff, but I think the details are also important. You watched Dr. Furman on public television, and you had this revelation, and you had a house full of food that wasn't compliant. What did you do? Like the movie of the next thing you did around food?
Yeah. The next thing I did after, because I had already kind of taken out some of that stuff, but like I said, the lean meats, the fat-free cheeses, the sugar-free stuff, the baked chips, the low-calorie alcohol, that stuff was still in the house. And so it was like a second clean around or cleanup of everything. And I just got out some trash bags. I'm like, I'm done. It's over. I'd rather put it in the trash than put it down this trash, or, eat it myself. And so, my husband, we were dating at the time, but he was on board supporting me, but he personally wasn't on board doing any changes. But thankfully, he, was so open to having the house be, whole food, plant-based and clean. And he traveled for work. And so he was, eating outside of the house most of the time anyway. So I cleaned out everything. If it was not conducive to my lifestyle, if it was something that was not optimally helpful, bye. I got rid of it. And that was really, what's the word? Exhilarating, I guess, would be a refreshing and relieving to not have this, disguised as healthy food around me. I could just be fresh. I could be whole. I could, control everything that I was making 100% with real whole fresh ingredients. And so I just got the trash bags out and away it went.
Mhm.
Get out of the house, because if it's not in the house, you can't eat it. Like if it's not there, you can't eat it at home if it's not there. So that was really important to me to get the house clean.
Right. And you're still in Nebraska?
We were actually in Chicago at this time, in Chicago suburbs.
Okay. And did you have a community of people that you could make this change with and support? And
No, I talk about this a lot. My community was my Eat to Live book and Google. Because at this point, I mean, this was about 5 years ago. I don't even know if Facebook groups were really, I don't even know if they existed back then. Like there were pages, I remember following a bunch of pages on Facebook, but there really wasn't the big, this community really wasn't that big, 5 years ago, or I wasn't able to find, what I needed. So, I had friends that knew what I was doing. My trainer was familiar with the lifestyle and stuff. So I did have, support from others in that way, but not anyone in real life that was doing the same thing with me. So that was a struggle. But again, it's even more so why I do what I do now, because you don't have to do anything on your own. You shouldn't have to, struggle by yourself and, have no one to talk to. Like that sucks. So, I'm just so glad now that the movement and the support is so much greater now of, people like us and different programs and videos and all that. It's really important to success, is having that support and guidance and tools, and community is huge.
So what sorts of things did you start eating when you made the change? Did you immediately become like a tofu and quinoa person, or were you eating things that looked sort of like what you were familiar with?
I was open for everything. I didn't really get into like the fake meats or fake cheeses or anything like that. I did a lot of just whole fresh stuff. I did a lot of veggies, beans, whole grains, fruits, nuts and seeds, and I would make a lot of soups, a lot of stir fry, a lot of smoothies and salads, like my 4 S's: soup, salad, stir fry, smoothies were really key meals for me. And I guess the two that come to mind right away, I remember right after I discovered this whole food plant-based lifestyle through Dr. Furman, and I got the Eat to Live book, and I started making goji berry chili, vegetable chili, and black bean brownies. And I remember like waking up in the morning and realizing that I had made those and they were in the fridge, waiting for me. And I would get so excited that I could fill up and eat these like delicious foods and, drop weight and feel better and increase energy and all the other stuff that came with it. So those two always come to mind. Goji berry, vegetable chili, and black bean brownies were like, I ate so much of that the first few months. But yeah, a lot of soup, salad, smoothie, and stir fry, I guess, were my main things.
Mm-hmm. What about, so you didn't have any social support on the pro side.
Mm-hmm.
What about the people who had known you and who were hanging, you hung out with, and family? Were they on board, or were they skeptical?
I think if they were skeptical, it was just because I had like, oh, here's Bethany again, another diet. Like, let's see how this goes, because I had just been on a diet, off a diet, up in weight, down in weight, for my whole life. Most of my life that, anyone knew me, that was always either on or off, or trying something new, losing weight, gaining it back and stuff. So I think if there was any skepticism in that way, it was just based on what I had shown them in the past of fad diets and all kinds of roller coaster stuff. But, when I didn't stop living this lifestyle, and when the weight didn't stop falling off, and when my energy didn't stop rising, I think people were like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? And it's so cool to see too, so many of our close friends and family members are living this lifestyle now, just based on, me leading by example and having not only the results speak for themselves, but I'm just so passionate about sharing this lifestyle because of what it did for me, that I just can't help, sharing the knowledge and the experience and the journey and the how-tos and stuff. I might have been a little bit too excited at first and maybe scared some people off, but, it just shows how much passion and real life, real life-changing, life-saving that this lifestyle can be. So I just keep sharing and keep it positive and show people the how-tos and stuff. And it's been cool to kind of see, some friends and family jump on board and have massive success themselves. That's really cool.
And I don't want to let you go without telling the Domino's pizza story.
Oh, yes.
Because you're right, we're kind of condensing a multi-decade journey into less than an hour.
Hmm.
And I don't want to give the impression that before you didn't know what you're doing and then you saw the light and everything was perfect.
Right. Yeah. There were struggles for sure. The story that Howard's talking about is the Domino's pizza. So I'm at home. My husband's on a business trip. He's out of the house for a couple days. And I order this Domino's pizza, extra cheese, all to myself. I paid for it in cash so that nobody saw my credit card statements and it didn't exist. And this was probably, I don't know, I want to say a year into me making the decision to make a change, like quite a while after, probably within that first year. And anyway, so I order this Domino's pizza. I pay for it in cash. I smash the whole thing, one sitting, and I hide the evidence in the garage. We had these like trash bins and I buried it. Like I made a decision that I was hiding the evidence of this Domino's pizza box and all my greasy napkins and stuff. And I didn't tell anyone about that for a long time. I hid the evidence and I pretended it didn't exist, which is what I always used to do with fast food. I would go to fast food, I would get all the stuff, and then I would stop at a gas station before I got home and throw it away so I didn't have to see it, the wrappers in the car or bring it in the house or have anyone else know. And so it was alarming to me that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something alarming, like this is, get a handle on this and address it right now. And I could have easily said, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Clearly, I'm the same person as I was 10 years ago. I'm hiding evidence. I'm eating whole pizzas by myself. Like, what am I doing? I could have easily thrown in the towel there and said, all right, I'm just done. And I didn't, I think that there was just something, again, something in me that I was giving myself grace and acceptance for what just happened. Like, it's okay. We will move forward. We will continue. And, now I tell the story all the time and help, clients in these same situations because it is a journey. There are struggles, there are obstacles, and having that decision that you're not going to quit no matter what happens, no matter what someone tells you, no matter what a magazine tells you should look like, no matter your uncle giving you a bad time at Christmas, you're not going to quit. And I just always told myself that was the decision that was made, and there was no changing that decision. But how I moved forward was totally different than how I had ever moved forward before.
So do you think, looking back, that the Domino's incident was a net negative or a net positive?
Net positive for sure, mostly because I'm, now as a coach, I'm able to say, look, a year into my journey, I smashed a whole pizza and hid the box. I'm just like you. Like, I am human, and there were tons of struggles. And I just don't like looking back at things as, having regret or, worrying or wafting in any negative, because there's always something that I either was successful or I learned and I grew from it. And so that story I'm able to use now. I'm able to, at that time I was able to look at it and say, okay, it doesn't matter that you smashed a whole pizza. What are you going to do now going forward? Don't hate yourself, beat yourself up, but where are you going to go from here? And just keep going and know that one piece or one whole pizza does not break your journey, and it doesn't define who you are either.
Right. I find at the moment, no matter where I am or what I've done, at the moment that I can say, oh, that was a mistake. I'm going to stop now. I'm going to turn around and go back in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Then the whole thing is now a success. Because we work with a lot of people in the Big Change program who've made these big changes. The program can last for up to a year. So people might be 8-9 months in, and all of a sudden they have a relapse of a behavior that they thought they would never see again.
Yep.
And when they work through it, they tell me, they come out on the other side saying, now I don't have to be scared of that anymore.
Yeah. I think so many people are so fearful of that failure. It is. I mean, it sucks to have the feeling of like you letting yourself down, like I talked about earlier. But having so many of those moments, it does make you stronger. Like I know it seems like it would make you weaker, failing and failing and failing and failing again, but it doesn't. It makes, as long as you are, like you said, you're addressing it and you're working through it and you're calling it like it is and you're saying, what can I learn from this? And how am I going to move forward now with this information from this struggle or obstacle? And it just really, it builds you and your mind and your trust with yourself so much, to be so much stronger. I talk about a lot, you have to be your own best friend in life. Like you're the person you hang out with the most every day. And so having the words spoken to yourself, just like you would talk to your best friend, your mom, your sister, and having that kind of change of perspective is key too, because I would say horrible things to myself that I would never say to anybody else.
Right. It's like your best friend is the class bully who's around you all the time and just putting you down.
Yep. And so how can you really feel good if you're telling yourself over and over that you are a failure, that you suck, or that you can't do it? Like you have to build yourself up. And I know it is weird and difficult and uncomfortable at first, but hitting those obstacles and struggles head on and working with yourself and holding your own hand and say, how are we going to go through this? Like you do have yourself. And I know I talk about a lot, like I was alone on my journey, but I had myself and I used myself to help me move forward. I know that sounds kind of weird, but picturing it in that way and knowing that you're on this journey with you and you got your own back is kind of comforting and kind of cool and empowering to know that you got this,
I love that. I love that. And yeah, it reminds me, my partner Josh Lajani talks about, we, like he's like, yeah, I made it. I formed a team with myself.
Yep.
And he also tells like people who are beating themselves up. It generally it feels like a very responsible thing to do, right? And he'll say, that's actually a cop out.
Yep.
Right?
The harder,
it means you don't have to do the work because poor look at me.
Yep. It's harder. Well, I should say it's easier to beat yourself up than it is to, you're right, to do the work and to ask yourself, and to go through kind of dissecting that struggle a little bit in order to know what you need to do to move forward. Yeah, that's definitely harder than saying, well, told you couldn't do it, and beating yourself up. Like it is. But the harder, that harder journey, that harder choice of taking something head on and addressing it is where the growth and the strength and stuff comes from. And it's not always hard. Sometimes, like now, I'll talk to myself and be like, really? You're going to try to talk yourself into that? Try again. And I make it fun with myself too. I call myself out in that way too. And, get my own self back on track in those ways. So it's not always, hard and burdensome and uncomfortable. It does get more comfortable. It's just different at first, it's not bad or wrong. It's just different.
So I love this conversation and your insights and your hard-won wisdom. And for other people who are thinking the exact same thing right now, where can they follow you, find out more about you, and maybe work with you?
Absolutely. Everything can be found at my website, lovechard.com. And
say it slower.
Yeah, lovechard, Lovechard, like the Swiss chard leafy green. And I have a public Facebook page that I do a weekly live show every Tuesday on. And working with me can happen in one of two ways. I do one-on-one clients as well. And I have a monthly membership site called NutriBabe Nation. And in this month...
Say that slow again, too.
Yeah, NutriBabe Nation.
I feel like I'm your marketing coach. Say it slow.
Slower. Yes.
Help them find you.
Yep. NutriBabe Nation.
NutriBabe Nation.
Yes. All the information, testimonials from current members, info, all of that can be found at NutriBabeNation.com. And in NutriBabe Nation it's an ongoing monthly community membership site platform. So there are courses, tutorials, how-tos, trainings, videos, Q&As, and also a members-only support group in it for the live interaction type stuff. So have just over 100 members and monthly members in there, and people are really not only are the change that's happening in each individual person, but the community and the support that is being built in this group, type setting and closed, private, non-judgmental place is so cool to see. I think there's a lot of social media can have a negative kind of feeling sometimes with trolls and judgment and people hiding behind a keyboard and stuff. And it's really great to have the safe place of asshole-free zone with my members. So people they're changing their own lives, and they're helping others in their own journey change the lives of their fellow members. It's just so great to see. I just love it.
It's fantastic. And we were over an hour before I had to mark this episode explicit. So we did pretty good.
Oh, awesome.
The one that didn't record was explicit all the way through. So we're obviously maturing.
Yes.
All right. Well, Bethany.
That's all right.
I see the Bethany Stec in my mouth.
Oh, yeah. I get that all the time.
Bethany Stec Janicek, I'm so happy to talk to you. I'm so happy that we were able to get this to work this time. Yes. And I just love when I sort of think about like a little bit of a that movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, where he gets to see, like I can sort of see, like, you made this one decision and you actualized in this world, and how many people are being helped, have been helped, are going to be helped and enriched because of that decision, compared to if you had continued to sort of be quiet and small and hidden.
Yeah, it's crazy that I think, I didn't know it at the time, but I think deep down there was something that's like, you're not just doing this for yourself. Like, this is going to be not only a life-changing thing for yourself, but now, I help so many others too. I know what it's like to feel like I did before, so many people watching. I know what it feels like to have a lot of, the thoughts and feelings, and to be obese and emotional eater. Like, I've been there, and now I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. And I can't not help people do that same thing. So I think, at the beginning, deep down, there was something bigger than myself pushing me all the time to just keep going. You have to do this. You need to do this.
Right. It's like the acorn doesn't really understand oak, but something inside the acorn does.
Yeah. Kind of like that. It's so cool.
Awesome. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for all you do and for taking the time on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Howard, and same to you.
Take care.
You too.